Dominic Frisby, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. Is Tim with us?
He is Merry Trumpmas, everybody.
Yes, the day after the inauguration. What a day. He's already passed a gazillion orders.
Absolutely. I was wondering whether you'd actually be going to it, but I suppose you're so busy with all the things that you're doing. Tell us a bit about what you've been up to.
Well, I did have an invitation to go, and I didn't go because I've got a big show tomorrow, and I didn't want to upset that. But I must confess to feeling quite regretful that I didn't go. But yes, I've got a million things going on. My Substack, I've got two Substacks. One is my comedy mailing list, and the other is all my financial stuff and social commentary, and they're both going great guns. And I just put out a piece this week all about the rate gangs, and I think it's going to become my most read piece, so that's very exciting. But yeah, so everything's going very well. Investments are going well, the portfolio's going well, the Substack's going well, the comedy's going well.
What could possibly go wrong?
Well, exactly. And the very last thing is I've just literally finished. I send it off this morning. My new book about gold is called The Secret History of Gold, and that gets published later this year. But I'm just literally tidying up the footnotes now, and then it goes off.
Amazing. You have, in all the things you're doing, you had time to write a book about gold. That's quite incredible.
Yeah,
are you helping Elon Musk out with some of his rocket launches?
Oh my God, I just so want to meet him. I think a few people invited me to various dinners in America because they know that he watches my videos and follows me, and I think they thought if he saw me sat at a table, he might come and say hello or something. So I think that's why I got invited. But yeah, I'd love to help him with anything.
Amazing. So you talked about your portfolio being January. I think quite a few of the pods that we've done with you started in January. Obviously, everyone's looking forward to this year and what might happen in the markets. What do you think is going to happen this year?
Well, I just put out an outlook on the stock markets last week, and then the week before I did my New Year predictions. But my outlook for the stock market generally is that, I'm really bullish about America and the American economy, but my outlook for what happens in the economy doesn't always happen in the stock market and vice versa. And, he talked a lot about inflation, for example, and bringing it down, and inflation suits stock markets. In stock markets like a little bit of inflation, money creation, because it pushes up prices. And the S&P is richly priced. It's been going at, this bull market's pretty extended. And I think the price to earnings ratio of the S&P is 29 or 30 at the moment, compared to a long-term average in the low 20s. And similarly, the Buffett indicator, the market valuation to GDP, it's, I read it's double its long-term average. And it's expensive on price to sales ratio. It's expensive relative to other markets. There's the fact that, it's the first year of an electoral cycle. That's the first year after an election's not usually that good a year. Average returns are only 7%. So I sort of put it all together, and I sort of predicted a 10% return in the S&P. So not like the 25% bonanza year that it had last year or the year before. But so I'm bullish on America, but less bullish on the S&P, if that makes sense.
But also, presumably, the range that market could trade at could be wildly wide. In other words, it could be that maybe the probability is that it's higher, but there's a not tiny chance it could actually be demonstrably lower by the end of the year for all the reasons you cite. Because one of the indicators I follow is the Schiller Cape, the cyclically adjusted PE, and the market looks very toppy on that basis.
Yes, it does. And, I've read another thing. I don't know if it's true, but it was some guy, saying that junior miners are going to finally have their time. So that's the sort of thing you find every month. Somebody says that and it never happens. But he was making the argument that it actually suits Trump to have, a correction or a crash now, so he can blame it on the previous administration and get the purge out of the way. I don't think he thinks like that. But in any case, it's an argument.
What do you make of Trump coin? Because that hasn't been really widely reported by the media.
Well, I haven't looked into it. But if my understanding is correct, that he's issued a cryptocurrency, a coin, and it is genuinely him, and then I gather Melania's issued one as well, I can only ask myself, what the hell does he think he's doing? He is insane. It's just, these coins, these meme coins, they're funny and they're a laugh and all the rest of it, but somebody ends up losing their shirt over them. And the risks of doing something like that against the gains, I just do not know what he thinks he's doing.
So you talked about the American market going higher, and we've just seen the FTSE break out, actually from a very nice technical pattern. What do you think of the UK?
Well, I've written several articles on the Substack, which is, by the way, if you want to sign up, it's theflyingfrisbee.com. But my general theme is long America, short the UK.
Really?
And but I'm talking more about the economy than I am about the stock market, I suppose. But I just
general morale.
Well, just morale. I wrote another article where I cited the beginning of Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, and all of that. And I just think on one side of the Atlantic, they've got rid of Trudeau. You got Milei in Argentina. You got America, and you got Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and all of that, just purging government. And then you've just got on the other side of the Atlantic, the UK and the EU, which are just regulating themselves out of existence.
A rather sad 1970s tribute act.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I hadn't thought of it like that. But yeah, and we're just every decision he's getting wrong, and he's a laughingstock. And
do you think there's any likelihood that Starmer will end up being defenestrated by his own party before the end of his first term?
One of my predictions was that he survives this year. But of all the things that have been, all the shit that's sticking, I think the rape gangs is the really nasty one, particularly this business of him knowing, and not just the rape gangs, the guy, the Southport terrorist attack, he clearly knew that guy had terrorist affiliations, and he still branded everyone far right. And I think that's going to come back and bite, but we've become normalised under the Tories to having a new prime minister every other year since 2016 and Cameron. We had Cameron, then May, then Johnson, then Truss, then Sunak. But the reality is that's not a common occurrence. And there are two big catalysts in that. One was Brexit, and the other was COVID. And there isn't a big catalyst like that at the moment. And so, Starmer, even though 80% of the country didn't vote for him, he's still got his huge parliamentary majority. And I don't think he's toast just yet.
One of the intriguing things about Starmer is that if he were to go, it would reveal the absolute vacuum of any kind of credibility within the Labour Party.
Yeah. I mean, and if Reeves goes, I read an article the other day that argued that you need the Chancellor and the Prime Minister both to stick. If one goes, the other tends to go fairly soon after. You need Cameron and Osborne, or Johnson and Brown, or whatever. Sorry, Blair and
Morecambe and Wise, little and large.
Yeah, exactly. Blair and Brown. But if you start chopping and changing, then the Prime Minister soon follows the Chancellor.
Do you have any sympathy for the view that the Trump inauguration, whether you like Trump or dislike Trump, marks a massive sea change in almost like the whole vibe of the world? There's a feeling that pretty much anything is possible. I mean, I appreciate here in benighted Britain, it doesn't feel that way. We're in the middle of winter and everything's awful. But for so many people and for so many things, for example, I get a great kick out of the fact that he's already announced that the US is going to be leaving the WHO and the Paris Accord. It's like, well, this is clearly the direction of travel now.
I couldn't agree more, Tim. I'm so optimistic. And the other thing he does is he leads. He's a leader, and he's going, America's going to be great. We're going to be the best country in the world. I'm going to do everything for America. I survived that shooting, and there's a reason I survived that, and it's to make America great again. All that stuff. It really G's you up. It's like he's a brilliant promoter, Trump.
I mean, did you see Elon Musk bouncing onto the stage yesterday?
Yeah, I did. And so, he's a brilliant promoter. But then on the other hand, Starmer comes to power. Oh, we've got all these problems. We've got a 20 billion black hole. Oh, we got this. It's so negative. And if you're a shareholder, that's not what you want from the CEO.
Mic drop moment there.
Indeed. I thought you were going to continue on politics, Tim. So I thought I'd leave it.
No, I was going to let Dominic have his head.
Okay.
You go, go, girl.
I'm worried. I've got the old man syndrome of wittering on too much.
No, not at all.
I try not to.
No, I love it. No, I love full and frank answers. I think this is what podcasts are for. It's not a 5-minute BBC interview.
But going back to the Trump thing, do you think there is for whatever reason, it's like there's this phrase, people, some of these CEOs have had sort of reality distortion fields around them, people like Steve Jobs and let's say Elon may have the same thing. The idea that basically Trump is so powerful or perceived as being such a sort of has such a powerful aura, he literally changes the weather. So although our situation is radically different, it could yet change because of this. You get the feeling that the green nonsense, the net zero insanity is going to get put to the sword. The woke is going to get put to the sword. I just saw a great chart by Danny Polishuk saying I've just done a chart and it's like number of genders and it bibbles along at 2 and it suddenly shoots up in the sort of mid-teens to 200 and then it comes straight back down to 2 again. All these things.
It's like the chart of Trump's meme coin.
Exactly. So there's all this stuff going on, but it's going to have a real world effect. It's as if people have been living in a not so much a dream, but more of a nightmare for the last 4 or 5 years, and now reality is coming back, and we're going to follow the US, but it may take a while.
I think so. I just think ideas spread, and we're just going to look increasingly stupid. With America booming and us deep in recession simply because of stupid things like green energy and energy. There's been countless research on this. Cheap energy is essential. The more
sort of
sophisticated
economy without it.
Yeah, it's like the most important thing, and we're pricing ourselves out. Look, we literally can't thrive because of it. We haven't got the energy to run the economy, and it's just going to look so stupid, and it's just going to be exposed. And the beauty of X and social media and all the rest of it is, ideas spread quickly, but also we're just going to be memed. Like, do you think Musk isn't going to stop trolling Starmer? It's just going to make a laughing stock of him, and Starmer's just going to have to backtrack, and if he doesn't, if he doubles down, then somebody else will get the gig.
It doesn't look like the most intelligent policy to pick fights with the richest man in the world with a massive social media following.
Well, exactly. I think
the left can't meme.
No, well, if they can, I can't find any good left-wing memes. But the other big story there is Argentina. And, it's so important to the libertarian cause that Milei succeeds. And it's clear he is succeeding. And so, that's how governments, are full of risk-averse people. They won't do anything unless somebody else has done it first. But with Milei and Musk and Ramaswamy and Trump all blazing the trail, everyone else can now follow. And so, yeah, I'm really, really optimistic. But I just think we're 2 or 3 years and an electoral cycle behind.
Do you worry that the UK government might decide to bring in some laws to block X or limit powers or that there's various attacks on free speech? And if Musk goes in too hard, there's a possibility that could be raised up a notch.
Well, the more he makes a laughing stock of them, the more likely they are to try and stop it.
But I thought the whole point, this is going back to the birth of the internet or the World Wide Web, perhaps in the mid-90s. There was a phrase widely used back then, which is the internet interprets censorship as damage and roots around it. So what happened to that?
Yeah, the problem with that, I think, is that it's the gatekeeper. It's like YouTube. They become so big, they become these monopolies that therefore they control the narrative. And if they're in pocket with certain governments, as we've seen, like I made a prediction that was wrong a good few years ago, that I said that Google was too powerful to be on its own. It would have to be government owned. But actually, the net effect of what happened was they just became influenced by the government.
Well, they became captured by stealth, but
exactly.
a lot of this stuff has gone into reverse with the likes of Trump's rearrival. So,
well, that's there.
Like Dominic, I'm a lot more a lot more optimistic now than I was before, because I mean the EU's already been trying to sort of block X, but I mean it's such a pathetic, sad, again sort of antediluvian policy that someone's saying nasty things about it, so we have to cancel them. Well, I'm sorry, but I think Trump ended that nonsense.
I agree, and the large social media companies, I'm not so sure about Google, but, speech goes where it's freest. And that's why, for example, Twitter and Twitter is where the narrative is set. It might not be the biggest reach. Facebook has a bigger reach, but Twitter is where the narrative is set. And in any case, other social media companies are following. You saw Zuckerberg there, sat in second row, 5 up from Elon Musk. He's suddenly right-wing and anti-censorship. He's changed his tune. And, that's WhatsApp. And so I just think Google will have to go down the no censorship route if it wants to survive, because otherwise, a lot of people are now already using, for example, AI instead of Google as their search engine. And so the EU is and that sort of technocrat mentality. I've talked about it coming from the West, coming from America and so on. It's also coming from the East. It's Eastern Europe, and it's just in Western Europe is just increasingly sandwiched between these two forces, which very much have the other side of the argument, and they will get squeezed, and we'll get left behind, so dramatic. I mean, if you look at growth in the States and then growth in Western Europe since the financial crisis, it's incredible how much more the States has grown by. I think the States has grown by 80 or 90%, and we've grown by 12 to 15% or something. I've got those numbers. They're a bit imprecise. And so it just can't last. I'm so optimistic.
Do you have any concerns that AI is going to destroy jobs in the West?
No, I don't.
Or would you say that the new opportunities will a bit like the response to Ludditism, which is the new opportunities will more than compensate for the ones that are put to the sword?
I agree. I don't think it'll be anything like as disruptive as the Industrial Revolution was. And in the end, that was, with everyone having to leave the country and go to the cities. I don't think, on a relative basis, I don't think the disruption will be as great. And I just think the nature of work will change, and those that embrace AI best will be those that thrive best.
But you presumably concede that for a lot of the older generation, it's going to be a problematic experience. For example, I was in Primrose Hill yesterday, and I overheard someone saying that basically there will be no junior lawyers in X years because they'll all be out of a job by AI.
There'll be junior lawyers. Somebody's got to work the AI. Somebody's got to interpret it.
But it's difficult to see a growth scenario where, because I think they were talking about, I don't know whether it was a mortgage statement or something about a corporate policy. But either way, I mean, we've just sort of started dipping our toe into what AI is capable of. I first saw it with my own eyes in a really trivial context just before Christmas. So I put out a Christmas commentary, and I usually write a bit of festive doggerel. And I asked, I forget which service I used, but it was an AI platform to do some satirical Christmas songs, and it was rewrite the lyrics. And it did as good a job as I could have done.
Oh, they're brilliant at it.
Bloody hell. So in other words, some of this hype is undoubtedly justified.
Yeah, no, it can't. It's a brilliant writer. It's not very good at writing jokes, but for songs and things like that, it's brilliant. And that's just tip of the iceberg stuff. But the increased efficiency and the increased productivity that it generates is going to create a huge boom for everyone. It's going to generate so much wealth. It's going to be good. If you go back and you look at Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, I forget how many pilgrims there were. I should ask AI, but let's just say there were 20 pilgrims. I think it's 18 of those 20 pilgrims, their job still exists today, even if the nature of their job has completely changed. The job still exists. And that's what AI
Well, nearly all of them would have been religious, and I can remember.
No, they weren't. They were like millers and things like that.
No, but I'm saying there's also like the nun's priest, and I'm sure there was.
But they still exist.
Yeah, but well, this is the point, which is I remember before AI came along recently, there was a study about 10 years ago, maybe longer, and it was about the purported, the putative impacts of robotization of the workforce. And there were two. Well, the one thing I was struck by, I need to go and find it because it was probably done by one of the consultancy firms, but it basically said that the job most likely to be replaced by machine was going to be accountancy, which I thought was ironic since it was probably an accountancy firm that generated the report in the first place. And the ones least vulnerable to replacement, one of them was priest, and the other one was, well, I think they were a bit coy about it because the next one down was like personal therapist, but I think that was code for sex worker.
Personal therapist.
Yeah, well, there'll be AI, there'll be robot sex workers, but there'll be.
Well, I believe there already
humans.
are. I'm told on good authority that they already exist. But that's just my colleagues at work.
Yeah, I just think the nature of work changes, but the work itself will still be there. I mean, accountancy is the old. People say that prostitution is the oldest profession. I think accountancy is. Actually, I think mining is, but I think mining predates civilization. But in any case, there were accountants in ancient Mesopotamia, and there'll be accountants in Mars when we eventually colonize it.
So Tim mentioned Trump coin. That leads us on to the outlook for cryptocurrencies. Are you bullish? And
Yep.
if so, are you bullish on Bitcoin and the altcoins? How would your portfolio be spread?
Well, like having got my fingers burnt in previous cycles, I'm pretty much I'm a bit of a Bitcoin maximalist. I've got some other coins like left over, but I just think own Bitcoin, and I wouldn't worry too much about the rest unless you're a kid and your fingers on the pulse and you follow this stuff and you're on WhatsApp chat groups and you can get in ahead of the hype and all of that. But they're all those ones. They're just, I don't like them. I don't like shit coins. They're I know people who've made fortunes from them, but it's just too easy to lose your money. And
you don't hear about the losers. You only hear about the winners.
Well, exactly. And even in Bitcoin, there's been so many losers in Bitcoin. People who had their coins stolen, or they got hacked, or they sold too early, or this or that. But I think this year we have the blow off top, and then there's 4 stages to a crypto cycle. There's the sort of quiet accumulation and the bull market nobody notices. Then you have the noisy bull market and the blow off top. Then you have the monster crash. Then you have the sort of post crash whipsaw, and then you're back into the quiet accumulation. And I think we're in the sort of bull market going into the noisy blow off top. I think we see that and the monster crash this year.
Yeah, that does make sense because sentiment was actually very bearish, even though it was trading around $70,000, and that this move up felt very much like people had missed the boat. And in the short term, I think it's probably got a little bit overdone, especially with the inauguration of Trump. But overall, the trend is still up. And this year it probably looks like it will go up a bit more. But there isn't that crazy frenzy that normally comes right at the end of the trend, the sentiment being, off the hook. And if that does come this year, then it will be falling from quite a high level. Do you have any particular targets for Bitcoin or
changes? I think originally I was hoping for 150 grand, and I think I might have overcome with bullish sentiment. I might have gone, I think probably 150, 200 grand, something like that. But what's good about this bull market? It's been quite gradual. It's gone up a bit and then it's pulled back, and it's gone up a bit more and then it's pulled back. It's quite stair-steppy in a good way.
I can imagine people find it hard to get into Bitcoin, paying over $100,000 for a coin. At this point, I think they need something to get the last squeeze of the sentiment out, so everybody becomes crazy bullish. There's got to be, there's been the ETF and there's been some positive things, but I think something else needs to happen. There's also obviously talk about the US using Bitcoin in their reserves, so that's again a positive thing, but still, as we know, public participation.
If that happens, by the way, then I think Bitcoin goes way above 200 grand.
Well, there's no reason why they shouldn't buy some. I mean, if you even just as a hedge, I mean, why not? They buy other currencies that end up going down a lot, and so it would make sense within a portfolio, even if it was a small amount. But I think I don't know. What do you think about the use case argument when we start using it on? Do you think there's any possibility that we'll start using it a bit more than we're using our normal fiat currency?
Well, you're talking about using it as a medium of exchange, or using it as a store of value?
No, I mean day to day. So people, that I think that's the adoption that would really send it, to crazy levels.
Well, isn't the point that the store of value is determined by the market, but the medium of exchange is determined by the regulator? So, for example, I think I'm correct. As things stand, we can't buy Bitcoin for our clients because the regulator won't allow us to.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying but if you were allowed to personally use it, you are allowed to personally use it, and if you were able to go to Tesco's and pay for your shopping or whatever, or wherever you go, that would give a bigger adoption. Now, at the moment, most people who buy Bitcoin will probably be buying it as a store of value in a very similar way to the way people buy gold, and in the same way, you can still use gold as a medium of exchange and have cards that relate to it and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just wondering whether technology will move a step forward in order to make that. Initially, the kind of dream was that everybody would be using Bitcoin to buy their coffee and buy even small and big transactions, which you still can do. It's just not that easy. Do you think that could potentially develop further and more people will use it?
Well, I don't think the dream was that people would go to Tesco's and use Bitcoin, or you buy their coffee with Bitcoin. It was designed to be cash for the internet, and it's a means to send cash across the net. And it's the real world thing I've always thought was a bit of a red herring.
Okay, that's interesting.
And but for example, I've got to go and do a job in the States next month, and it was just easier to pay in Bitcoin than it was to pay in US dollars cross-border. And for cross-border payments, Bitcoin is more convenient if you've both got wallets. If you're not set up with a wallet and you haven't got a Bitcoin treasury, then obviously it's more complicated. But once you're set up with Bitcoin, you've got the treasury, it's the easiest way to send money across borders. It's also the cheapest way to send money across borders. And if you go on Bitcoin Whale or whatever he's called, one of those Twitter things, all he does all day is he just posts whale transactions. And, all the time, people are sending tens, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars. And it's just, you can send it from phone to phone. You don't have to ask anyone's permission, and it costs like a few quid. It's so for sending huge amounts of money, it's just way better than fiat, particularly if you're sending it across borders. You've got to deal with all the money laundering and all that stuff. And the other day, I sent a payment of 1 sat. Now, Bitcoin is divisible to 8 decimal places, and 1 sat would be, the smallest denomination, and it would be the equivalent of sending about 1/20th of 1p. Okay. So I just think the implications of being able to send a payment that small, and I sent it to someone in Australia.
Why did you do it?
To test it.
Right.
See if I could do it or not.
Thought so. Yeah. Okay. And it didn't cost anything to do it.
No, because I did it with a thing called Wallet of Satoshi, and there's some reason why it's using the Lightning Network, and there's some reason why you can do it. But so imagine the fiat system. You can't send a payment at 1p, let alone 1/20th of 1p. And even with all, one of the reasons fiat is so successful is not because of the government design, it's because of all the fintech, the financial architecture that's built on top of it. And it's brilliant, one of what's fintech's done. And it's because that architecture is so brilliant, I think it's the only reason fiat money survived as long as it has. Because the actual money itself is crap. It's a useless store of value. It's a useless medium of account, unit of account, and it's a useless. It's an okay medium of exchange as a result of fintech, and that's the only reason it's survived. And obviously, the architecture around Bitcoin, the fintech architecture, on the one hand, it's amazing because I can send 1 penny, 1/20th of 1 penny, but it's not as widespread and as universal as the architecture around fiat fintech, and that won't happen until people start using it more. But I think we've already got something like 100 million active wallets, so people are using it, and it's gradually spreading. But if the micropayments thing now there's probably other cryptocurrencies that are better for micropayments. In fact, I know there are. But in any case, the implications of micropayments, the economies that it opens up, tipping being just one of them. There's just so many, identity verification and passwords and all of that. You just send your 1/20th of 1p. If you like a video, you send 1/20th of 1p, and so on. It just opens up entirely new economies that didn't, and means of wealth creation and spreading wealth that just didn't previously exist. And I just think the implications of that are enormous. We've been talking about this in Bitcoin for a long, long time. It hasn't quite materialized, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. It's just taking slightly longer than expected. So, all of these, coming back to your original question, will more people use it? Well, those are use cases as medium of exchange, but as store as value, that's its main function at the moment. People buy it because, you can buy it at one price and 2 years later, hopefully it'll be a lot higher than the previous price, because technologically it is a superior form of money to fiat, even if the architecture around it isn't as good yet. So people are storing their wealth in superior currencies. Let me tell you a story. In the 1960s, there's another comic called Stefano Paolini. And his grandparents, he's Italian, so we get on well because we've both got Italian grandparents. But his grandparents were what's called mezzadri, which basically means sharecroppers. And they were basically the descendants of medieval serfs. And for generation after generation, they had earned their living working the land, and they had to give half their produce to the owner of the land, and the other half of the produce they were free to sell. And that's how they lived for generations. And then in the 60s, his granddad came to the UK, and his grandma followed about 6 months later. And in the 60s, the Italian lira was a disaster currency. And even sterling wasn't great, but it was a lot better than the Italian lira. And they came to England, and they started, and Italians all worked, for their cousins and their mates, and they all worked in sandwich shops and waiters and all that
Soho?
kind of thing. In Soho and in Glasgow, and ice cream shops, and a lot of them went to Wales and worked in the mines. But they couldn't, there was all sorts of protectionist law that meant they couldn't work for big companies for some reason. That's why they always tended to work in these, cash in hand businesses. But as a result of working in these cash in hand businesses, they all tend to be paid in cash. And so not only were they being paid in superior currency, the pound against the lira, they had the big expense of government that is income tax removed, because they were, and tips as well. I mean, they might have paid tax on some of it, but they probably didn't. Anyway, within 2 or 3 years, and so Stefano's grandparents, they came here and they were waiters. But within 2 or 3 years, they were able to go back to Italy and buy an apartment because of the difference in the currency. And so suddenly, for the first time in the history of that family, they owned real estate. And then 2 or 3 years after that, they were able to buy some of the land on which they had previously been mezzadri. So the entire social status of that family changed. And the reason that happened is quite simply is that they earned and saved in strong currency, and they spent in weak currency. Now, if you take that same dynamic today, if you take you're a hardworking person, if you save in gold and Bitcoin, strong currency, and you spend your shit currency, your fiat, then you give it a bit of time and the effects of compounding and all the rest of it, you can transform your existence. particularly with fiat declining. I think the pound has lost just shy of 40% of its purchasing power since 2020. It's extraordinary. And so, my message is that is what Bitcoin is for. That is what gold is for. It's a savings vehicle. You put your fiat earnings, which are destined to lose 10% of their value every year, you save them in a currency that's going to appreciate. And over time, and the value of your labor is preserved, and over time, you will transform your existence. And that's why we need Bitcoin, and that's why we need gold.
On a related note, do you have any concern that we're going to see potentially a disorderly blow up in, let's say, bond yields this year with heightened inflationary pressure? Exactly what happens to currencies and inflation in relation to the US, I find completely chaotic given what Trump is saying on various different things. But do you have a concern? I do. So I'll show you my hand already, that the bond market may blow up this year, and that will have an impact on currencies as well, because they enter a kind of doom loop together.
One day, Tim, I will understand bonds. I've never bought a bond in my life. I don't follow the bond market that closely. I just don't understand it. I understand that.
But just think of it as a variation on the whole fiat thing, which is a government obligation.
I get that. So the point I was making is that I'm not qualified. I can't offer any valuable insights into the bond markets except to regurgitate what other people have said.
Sure.
But what I do think is very likely is that we have some kind of sterling crisis, like here and now. I think
it may already be happening in slow motion.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I say here and now. And if we have some kind of currency crisis in sterling and a devaluation, I mean, I think parity with the US dollar is a real possibility. But if we do have some kind of crisis, as I say, that will manifest itself in the bond market in some form or other, spiking rates or something. And the reason I argue about a crisis coming in sterling is partly because, the unsustainable deficit spending, the stupid chancellor, the fact that she's doesn't understand basics of the Laffer curve, and all the millionaires have left, and there's just not going to be the revenue to support her spending, and the bond market are going to take her to task over it, because she's going to have to print and spend, and in any case, government spending is a precursor to money creation and taxation. So the other thing I say about sterling is that there's this incredibly reliable 8-year cycle that I call Frisby's flux, because I'm the only person that's identified it. But it's just almost like clockwork. And sterling capitulates every 8 years. And we'll go back to 1968, the sterling crisis then.
76.
Well, yeah, I'll talk us through it. Yeah. But we'll start in 68 with Roy Jenkins devaluing sterling then, and all that stuff with the gold pool and all of that. Then you go to 76, Dennis Healy, sterling crashed again. Then it got its shit back together. Then the next one was actually 85, it hit the low. And 84, 85, the low came in 85 with the Plaza Accord. And that was more and it followed the mining. It was at the height of the mining strike, and it just followed the Falklands War and all of that. But
then we had 92.
Yeah, I'm coming to that. But just stay on 84, 85 at a moment. And sterling went to 104, almost to parity with the US dollar. Then you come to 92, Soros, Black Wednesday, all of that. Then sterling crashed in 2000 with the dot-com crash. It was, sterling goes up and down with the financial markets. And it wasn't sterling's worst performance, but it still sold off badly. But it rallied all through the noughties. In 2007, sterling was $2.10 it went to. And then, of course, 2008 came along and sterling crashed again. Then the next one after that, 8 years on, we go to 2016, Brexit, sterling had a big crash then. And then it had another crash, actually, 2018 with that Theresa May's conference speech and all of that. But it kind of, it's quite hard to get accurate data because the crash. Do you remember that flash crash in sterling happened overnight and it was sort of rebounded? But anyway, 2016. So here we are in 2024, 25. The next crash is due. In fact, if anything's overdue, but it may already have started because, just 2 months ago, sterling was 135, something like that. And today I looked 122. A lot of it obviously depends on the US dollar, but I think a really potential trade to play is long the yen, short sterling, because the yen's so cheap. But I think sterling has got very real problems ahead of it here and now. And so the importance of owning alternative currencies, Bitcoin and gold, to sterling are more important than ever. And so to answer your question, I'm bearish on sterling, and I think that has repercussions in the bond market. US bonds, I just don't know.
Sure. Because the reason I ask is that it's very easy to foresee a near-term future where, bond yields rise uncontrollably, and then they get heavy. So then there's financial repression, capital controls, again, stuff that we last saw here in the 1970s.
I think capital controls are coming.
And that's
there's
not
so
exactly
much money trying to leave.
It's not exactly a bullish case for the City of London then.
No, I think the City of London has destroyed itself since 2008. It gets worse and worse. I mean, it just needs. Actually, that's one thing Farage would be very good on because he understands the city. But we need something to revive that place.
Do you think that's another argument?
I think real estate in the UK has also got major problems coming home to roost here and now. And I think real estate crash, sterling crash, they all kind of come at the same time.
And that's forecast for next year, isn't it? The long sort of property cycle.
No, I think
26.
I thought it was now. I thought it was 25. 2007 was the last high. Anyway,
okay.
but
it's not sort of quibble on timing.
No, I mean, and property crashes take a long time. But the reason I say what I say about property is, like there's two things you need for a property boom. You need shortage of supply, okay. But Rightmove is saying it's got like its Boxing Day listings was a record 20%. 26% higher than the previous Boxing Day record, which was Boxing Day 2023. So there's more supply than ever. Then you have to go, okay, and so on the one side there's more supply, and on the other side of the coin there's less money. There's less money because people have got less money because the economy isn't booming. There's less money because Labour's higher taxes mean buyers have less capital. There's less money because higher mortgage rates push up the cost of money, so there's less money to borrow. There's less money because stamp duty is put off second and third time buyers, because who's going to buy a second or third home and pay 12 or 15% tax stamp duty on it? Nobody. And there's less money from overseas because nobody's investing in the UK because of the cost of buying property and so on. So, there's less money and more supply, and it's just this is the perfect storm for real estate at the moment. And if it doesn't, even in nominal terms, I mean, I know in real terms it's already down 20%, but in nominal terms, I think it falls this year. And if we get your bond market crisis and rates spike, well, that's what happens to mortgage rates and variable rates and all of that. Then you've also got the thing that all those deals done 4 or 5 years ago when rates were cheap. I know I took out a mortgage 5 years ago, and it was the very bottom of the market, and I wanted to do it for 10 years, and my mortgage broker persuaded me to do it for 5 years, and I don't think I'll ever forgive him. But my thing comes up for renegotiation in August, I think, and my cost of debt is going to be more than twice what it was, more than twice. And so, and if we have a crisis in sterling and rates spike up, it's going to be even higher. So, it's a perfect storm for property.
So far, banking stocks seem to be doing pretty well. And I remember in 2005, they started to top out, which was, for me, an indication that we were close to the end of that bull run and something major was coming. So at the moment, I think property stocks actually building stocks aren't doing very well. So that might play out as you're saying. But interestingly, the banking stocks seem to be going great guns, and that is slightly at odds. So it's a bit of a a division in the signals there. But if they bring in capital controls, that is an absolute disaster. That would be a disaster. Perhaps that could be one of the things that would drive the final move in Bitcoin, because people would presumably just flock to that.
Yeah, but it's very difficult to do that if you're English or British because of the regulation. But yes, the more capital controls, like the Bitcoin has the highest use cases in places either where the money's shit, like Venezuela or something, or where there are onerous capital controls.
So you mentioned gold, but you haven't mentioned what you think is going to happen. Have you got any strong views for this year?
Yeah, I will come to gold in a sec. I just wanted to follow up on what you said, Paul, about the banking stocks. And you're absolutely right. They are a leading indicator. And, it's very easy to articulate a bearish argument. And that's why, bearish copy is always very popular. But in the actual marketplace, bulls are right more often than bears are. And so I take your point about the banking stocks, and I'm just looking at, as we speak, at a chart of Barrett. And Barrett's down 20% year on year, but it's done a fantastic double bottom at around 400p. And I quite like the look of that chart, to be honest.
Yeah.
So that conflicts with what I've just said. But so maybe it's a nominal, it's a crash in real terms, but not in nominal terms, and we get because of a lot of inflation. I don't know, but I've spent my life articulating reasons why the house market's going to crash, and it never crashes. But this time really does feel like a potential storm, and if it survives it, I'll declare this market permanently immune.
That might be the top.
Reached what looks like a permanently high plateau.
Well, exactly. And so coming to your question of gold, because of America and the boom and everything there, I have to say in dollar terms, I'm not quite like, if I was American, I wouldn't feel the need to be going out and buying loads of gold at the moment. But the difference is in the UK, I just think you got to own some gold. You have to, because, and I put there's a guide on my Substack, by the way. If you just type in Dominic Frisby guide to earning gold or something like that, you'll find a guide on how to buy it. But I just think you have to have some gold because of what can potentially happen to sterling. It's gold in sterling terms is at all-time highs.
It is £2,209.
Yeah, well, how about that? And it's even in the bear market of the last, of the noughties, of the tweenies, 2010 to 2015, in sterling terms, gold was a good buy because it protected you against all the crap that happened with Brexit. Gold might have not been the best performing currency, but it was a lot better than the pound. So I just think you've got to own some gold. The big gold often, like Charlie Morris says this, how gold and the bond markets sort of trade hand in hand, and they have parted company. He wrote a piece about that quite recently, and he thinks problems in the bond market are bullish for gold. And if your theory, Tim, that the bond market has problems, and I presume it applies to the US bond market as well, sure, then you want to own some gold. And then there's the geopolitical one of, like, China has bought more than 1,000 tons of gold since the US froze Putin's assets in 2022. So in 2.5 years, or coming up to 3 years, he's bought more than 1,000 tons of gold. That's like, and it's bought it under the counter, hidden. And I know this because I talked to Ross Norman and all the bullion dealers, and they just say there was another 500 tons last month, and they all know that it's China, and they're just not declaring their gold. And China says it's got 2,000 tons against America's 8,000 tons. Well, America won't audit their gold, and it probably isn't there. And if it is there, it's not of good delivery quality. China is dramatically understating its gold reserves. And, sooner or later, if those two countries fall out and we see the weaponization of finance, well, you can rest assured that China's going to suddenly declare its new gold holdings, and America is going to it's a major attack on the dollar. And so, this is coming. This is like inevitable. I don't think it necessarily happens this year, but it probably happens in the next 5 or 10 years. and you just got to own some gold.
Apparently, one of Biden's last acts was to pardon all the auditors at Fort Knox.
You're kidding.
No, I just invented that.
Oh, okay.
It could be true, though.
But it wouldn't surprise you, would it?
It wouldn't. It wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised Trump hasn't ordered an audit of Fort Knox, to be honest. But you know the joke. The head of security goes to the US president, Mr. President, there's no gold in Fort Knox. And Mr. President says, what do you mean there's no gold in Fort Knox? And the head of security says, there's no gold in Fort Knox. And the president says, double the guard.
I wanted to ask, because it's January, Dominic, and you've transformed yourself from a physical point of view. And I think for anyone who's looking for inspiration to sort of get themselves in shape, you've got an incredible story. Could you tell us how you did it?
Well, I've been trying to lose weight for a long time, and I've tried everything. And I think if you really want to lose weight, it's the incremental effects of lots of things put together. But the single most effective thing I found to lose weight is to fast 2 days a week, to do the 5-2 diet. A lot of people say do the 16-8 diet, where you fast 16 hours a day and eat 8 hours a day. But I kept, they kept having days when I wouldn't keep to it. But fasting 2 days a week is quite doable. So the first thing I would do is fast 2 days a week, and you'll lose £1 to £2 a week that way. The next thing I would do is plenty of exercise, and especially plenty of weights. But it's good if you do that exercise on fasting days, because then you burn off the fat quicker. Another thing I did is lots of dead hangs, which is hanging from a bar. I just found that incredibly beneficial. Sorted out so many neck problems and things that I had.
Surprisingly hard, isn't it?
Oh, it's really hard.
Probably really not hard for you now, but yeah, just a minute is difficult.
It's really hard.
How long can you do? Can you do 2? You can do 2 minutes, can't you?
I can do 3 now.
Fuck.
Well, actually,
that's amazing.
I can probably not, like I did 3 about 3 weeks ago, but I've just overdone it on my arm a bit. So I'm probably back. I could probably do 2.5 minutes now as we speak.
I found my wrist. It sometimes hurts my wrist, so I've got to be careful.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. But grip strength is a famous indicator of longevity. And dead hangs obviously help grip strength. But another thing I would do is I have a swig of cider vinegar every day. I find that's a really good way of suppressing your appetite. Skip meals whenever I can. Get a girlfriend who's a lot younger than you, who you want to look good for. It's a big factor. And but one of the big things I did is I read about seed oils, which would be vegetable oils, cooking oil, rapeseed oil, sunflower oil, all that stuff. And I've actually become quite indoctrinated about what I've read. And I'm convinced that it is the main ingredient in our food that was not there, 40 or 50 years ago. And that is the main reason why everyone's so fat. It's the presence of seed oils, because the body, these were oils designed to be industrial oils, and they started using them in our food. And American average, it's like over 30% of the calories Americans consume is now seed oil, and that was 0 50 or 60 years ago. And the body cannot get rid of them. And not only is it making us obese, it's giving us cancer and all the rest of it. And so one of the main changes I made is I religiously avoid anything cooked in seed oil. So that would be anything deep fried, unless it's deep fried in
olive oil,
in lard or olive oil, or best of all beef tallow drippings. But animal fats are great, because the other thing is when you eat chips that have been cooked in animal fat, you only need to eat about 3 or 4, and then you're full. Whereas when you eat them cooked in sunflower oil, they're just so. Any kind of processed food. I must make a video where I've just walked through a supermarket and pick up everything off the shelf and show you how everything has got seed oils in it.
Oh, please,
but I religiously, I will do, but I religiously avoid seed oil.
I made some pizzas.
I almost think that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. To that, I made some homemade pizzas, and I didn't do a great job of it, but I went from basic ingredients into what was quite a small pizza, and it looked small compared to what you'd buy from the normal chains. And like you say, when it's good homemade food, you can't eat a lot of it. It was almost impossible to finish this small pizza. Whereas if I bought a pizza from a chain, you could eat an extra large probably, and you wouldn't necessarily feel satiated. It's something about it that either they put chemicals in it to make you want more, or the body's definitely reacting to something. And these people are very clever at making you consume these products.
100%. And processed food, you've got to avoid it. And I mean, I'm quite tiresome to go to a restaurant with, because I say, can you ask the chef if he uses any vegetable oil in this? And they're like, oh. And so they have to go off and ask us. A lot of the time they're quite helpful. I just tell them I've got an allergy to it. But in any case, it's in everything. Puddings, pastry. Once upon a time we made pastry just with butter. Now it just uses stupid vegetable oils, and it's just killing you. Bread, any kind of supermarket bread, anything that lasts a long time, longer than it should last on the shelf, you can be sure it's got some kind of seed oil in it.
And then you posted this on X, didn't you? You got like 10 million views or something?
11
million views. Absolutely
really
incredible.
I couldn't believe it.
And how many DMs did you get from hot girls going?
None. I just got one DM from my ex-girlfriend who was really pissed off with me for being a slag on the internet, as she put it.
Oh, there we go. Just.
I think that's called the Pareto principle, isn't it? 10 million and 0.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. Did it help you? It must have helped your Substack or something. I mean,
it was very popular. Read Substack.
Excellent.
And in fact, I need to write something about health again, because when you're trying to get people to convert from regular reader to paid, it's really easy to go blah blah blah, this stock's going to make you 10 times your money, and it's going to be blah blah blah, and you sex up a stock, and then you put the name of the stock behind the paywall and hope that people convert. And that's the sort of technique that Agora and all that use, and which you and I, Tim, were trained in from the days of Money Week. But I actually found that the most conversions I ever had was from an article about health. There was one about peeing in the night, and there was another about some how I'd cut down on peeing in the night, and there was another about I can't remember what it was, how I got rid of my asthma and stuff like this, and anything to do with health. I couldn't believe the conversion rate.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. So, Tim, any further questions, or should we go to media picks?
I'm trying to think of any ground that we haven't covered, but we've had a whistle stop tour through just about everything today. So I'm nothing to add at the moment. Tim,
do you want to kick us off with yours?
Yeah, I must just get my lame attempt at humour out of the way. So every time I hear a phrase like blow off top, I immediately think of someone like Miley Cyrus. But anyway, let's move on to media picks. My media pick, and I don't mean to be offensive to Dominic's, but it's a professional cousin of his. It's not a specific routine. It's just the guy in question, who I hadn't heard of until comparatively recently. I don't know if you know a chap called Nate Bargatze.
I don't.
Dominic. So we came across him, I think, almost certainly on Netflix. So I've seen 2 of his sets now. But it's Nate Bargatze, Bargatze. I was curious about the derivation of the surname, and I think it's actually a Swiss name. So I think his father's Swiss, but he's American, Tennessee-born comedian. And he's very funny. And the main thing about Nate Bargatze is that he's also extremely family friendly. So he's one of those very rare beasts. And I think maybe Dominic's also one of them, which is a humorist and a comedian who can be funny without being offensive.
Brilliant.
So I'd encourage anybody to look up Nate Bargatze, and you'll come on in. You'll enjoy. The water's fine. You'll enjoy it.
Fantastic. So Dominic, apart from your book, which is going to be out in a while, and hopefully you'll come back and tell us when it's actually out.
And remind us the title again. It's Gold.
The Secret History of Gold.
Secret History of Gold.
Can you pre-order it, or is it too early?
Oh, it's too early.
Yeah. Okay. So, what have you got for us then?
Okay, so I've forgotten this.
Are you going to bring to the market Frisby coin?
I should do. I should do. One of the best coin this year has been Fart coin. And
no.
Then, Fart Coin has been the most successful coin this year. And then after the success of Fart Coin, they brought in Butthole Coin.
Oh my God. I mean, come on, we've got to be near the end of something with things.
Yeah, well,
things
exactly.
Like, yeah.
Do you think if you came up with Lost Coin, people would get the? You think people would?
Scam Coin was a
Scam
thing,
Coin
and
already is already out there.
Yeah, and it was 2 cycles ago, and the white paper identified exactly how the rug pull worked, and how he was going to rip everyone off. People still bought the coin, and then they complained when he did the rug pull.
Wow. Is there a Ponzi coin or a pyramid coin?
Yeah. They're 2 cycles ago.
Wow.
God, granddad.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. But this is why you can't, you just got to be a kid on the internet all the time to keep up with this stuff. We're too old, Tim.
Oh, you're only as old as the woman you feel.
But yeah, so you want a film I've seen lately?
Not necessarily.
Anything
anything
you might have liked or hated in any medium.
Okay, well, I'm gonna recommend. I'm gonna self-promote, and I'm gonna recommend your listeners go to Frisby's News, FRISBYS.news, Frisby's News, and they watch my new video, Right Wing Woman.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to recommend, because it's January. I don't know do you listen to Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett?
No.
Oh, right. Some brilliant podcasts. He's done some amazing podcasts.
I know, but I can't listen to him because he's had a million people on there talking about seed oils. He goes on about the seed oils, and then he takes the Huel dollar, and Huel is full of seed oil.
Is it really?
So I just I'm not listening to you. You're just that's just charlatan.
Well, I don't listen to him. I like listening to the experts that go on.
He gets great guests, but I'm not contributing to that.
Right.
He's a shill for big seed.
So
there you go.
So the one I particularly liked was the keto diet specialist. So I thought it was very, very interesting what she was saying about the impact on your mental health. And the way she came to that conclusion. So I'll share a link to that for those of you that you might want to have a listen. But Dominic, it's been so much fun and really interesting as always. And good luck with the book. Good luck with all the projects you're doing, which are numerous. Is there anything coming up that you could tell our listeners about? Again,
I've got loads of gigs coming up, and come and see me, frisbees.news. I'll post them all up on there.
Fantastic. And we'll share your Substack. Give us your Substack and your Twitter.
That's theflyingfrisbee.com and at Dominic Frisby is my Twitter.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and we look forward to having you back.
Thanks so much, Paul. Thanks, Tim. Have a lovely day.
You
and
too.
a Merry Trumpmas.
Thank you.
Excellent. Cheers. Thanks, everybody. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research or contact a professional advisor.